Hello friends, and welcome to the Hanged Man in the Moon. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm pleased to meet you. If you've been here before, thank you for returning. I'm truly honored. Friends, if you are a returning visitor, you surely know that this is my series in which I use tarot and oracle cards to help me explore topics related to living the intentional life. And friends, before we begin the spread, before we dive right in, I have a public service announcement for you. If you've been following along with this channel, you know that for the last year, I've been giving the continental tarot system my attention. I've been focusing on that system. And I'm about to transition into a deep dive year of Thoth studies. So I'm going to be leaving behind the continental tarot system for a while as I focus on the Thoth and Golden Dawn extension of that system. And so this is the last time we're going to be seeing these cards for quite a while. And the spread seemed to know that. The spread gave us a really powerful, fiery, energetic, creative reading for this week. And before we get into that again, I want to check our understanding of the zodiac. Now, you probably already know that most of us, when we think of the zodiac, consider Aries as the first sign of the zodiacal year. We move from Aries into Taurus all the way around back to Aquarius, to Pisces, and then we change to a new year with Aries again and do the whole thing over again, right? But there's another way of looking at the zodiacal circle, the zodiacal wheel. Now, there are two paths we can imagine. There is a path of descension into the material and a path of ascension back into the spiritual, into the divine. Yeah, a descent into matter, a return to the divine. The descent into matter is considered the wet way, the wet path. The ascent back into spirit is the dry way, or the dry path. And the descending path into the material begins with, believe it or not, Aquarius, and then goes down into Cancer. And then we transition into Leo, which is the beginning of the dry way, the dry path back into spirit, which culminates in Capricorn. And we're right here at that transition period from Cancer to Leo, which is wonderful. And this week's spread gives us a wonderful beginning of fiery, creative, passionate Leonine attributes with just a smidge, just a taste, a smattering of Cancer attributes to send us back off on the dry path. So friends, what are we about to do? We're going to look at the spread. We'll look at the whole thing all together and talk about it briefly, and then we'll break it down into its 4 component parts and talk about them. So friends, are you ready? Are you ready to enter the dry path of ascension back up to the divine? Come along with me. Here we go. What do you think of this spread? Do you agree with me that it's a beautiful spread, that these are beautiful cards? Are you going to miss these decks? I know that I will miss these decks a lot, but it's time for me to move on. However, we're not moving on quite yet, are we? If you're curious about these decks and you want to play with them on your own, if you don't have them yet, there's always a way. There will be a short video clip at the end of this video which will give you the names of the decks and the names of the creators. They're all still available to my knowledge. And also in the description box below, there will be links if you want to go over and take a look at one or all of these decks and perhaps purchase one or all of these decks. I highly recommend them. And just in case you are new to this channel, let me give you a breakdown of what you just saw. Now, this is a spread that I based on the Ace of Wands from the Tarot of the Holy Light. And you saw that there were 4 parts to the spread, right? Could you see that? There were 4 cards at the very tippy top They were from one deck, and they are the radiant light of the divine beaming into our lives, beaming into the question we ask of the tarot. And every week I ask the same question. I ask, how can we live our lives more intentionally in the coming week? And this is the divine wisdom, the divine knowledge, the divine light beaming into the answer to that question. And then there were 3 cards which were ascending from the bottom in a vertical column. And those were from one other deck, and they represent the wand that is growing in the light of the divine. What is growing for us in that divine wisdom, that divine light? And then there were 3 cards coming in from this side, right? Those 3 cards from yet another deck represent the hand, our hand, coming in to grasp that wand. So those 3 cards give us how we can grasp that which is growing in the light of the divine. And then there were those 2 round cards at the very, very bottom. Yeah, they're from an oracle deck, and they give us advice. What can we do in this situation, right? So, friends, that's the order that we're going to be reading this spread in. We'll begin with the 4 cards that give us the light of the divine, pouring into our lives, pouring into the answer to the question, pouring into the zodiacal wheel as we transition from the wet path into the dry path, our ascent back into spirit. So, here are those 4 cards. Let's take a look. This is the deck that I've been using for about a year now on this channel. I'm not saying that I'm never going to use it again. I'm not saying that I'm putting it completely aside, but I am giving it a break for a little while as I transition into my 4th year. And I love this deck. I love the creator of this deck. Payne-Towler is a brilliant, brilliant artist, creator, scholar, font of knowledge of both tarot and astrology, and she's just brilliant. And I hear rumor that she may be coming out with another deck. I'm not going to be able to say what it is or what it's about yet, but I'm anticipating that deck with bated breath. And we're working with this deck now, right? So let's focus on this deck. We had 4 cards. Starting in the upper left, we had the King of Wands, and then we had the 8 of Cups in the upper right. Then we had the Page of Wands in the lower right, and then in the lower left we had the Fool. Did you notice that they were all upright? If you know me, you know how I work with this deck. That's a remarkable thing. And for the last time using this deck for a while on this channel, I think the deck knew this was its send-off, and it wanted to give us a really let's get going kind of reading for this time of year and for its not final appearance, but for its last appearance for a while. And so, how are we going to read this spread? I considered this a couple of ways, but the way that really jumps out to me, logically makes the most sense to me, is to look at the pairing between the King and the Page of Wands as the central message of the spread. And then the 8 of Cups and the Fool being another kind of pair. Now, I could also say that, well, the King of Wands and the Fool are the pair, and then the Page of Wands and the 8 of Cups are their associates. And that actually makes another kind of sense. But let's go with the X, because I've fallen in love with the X reading for this spread when it really makes itself apparent. And so we're going to begin with the King of Wands and move into the Page. King of Wands. Let me show you this beautiful, beautiful regal figure here. Beautiful king standing there in front of a whole bunch of fire with a large wand there. Yeah, you notice that the wand, the tree, actually it's more than a wand. This is a tree that has been pruned within an inch of its life. Yeah? And this tree, having been pruned even this far, you notice at the very top of the 2 branches which remain, There is fire bursting forth from this. There is still a lot of life within this tree. And there are also plants on the side of the king. You see the radiant divine disc behind the head of the king as well. Lovely, lovely card, lovely, lovely king. Remember, we're all kings. Doesn't matter what kind of body we inhabit. We could be in a male body, a female body, a trans body, a cis body, an intersex body, a dog body. We could be anything. And we all have the king, the queen, the knight, and the page within us. We have all of those attributes available to us, if not fully accessible to us at the moment. Does that make sense? So we're all kings. We're all queens. You, me, all of us. So we are the king. And this king, you'll notice, is associated with Leo, which is the domicile of the sun. Now, do you remember last week in this spot we had the Knight of Wands reversed? But here we've got the King of Wands all upright, looking very jovial, looking very powerful, and reminding us that with this card, fixed fires, vital attributes are entering our world. And by the way, I'm a Leo. My sun is Leo. The sun is in Leo. A lot of fixed fire here. So this king has the might, has the king's touch. He is the king of kings. He is fire of fire. I know some people argue with me. Some people will say, what are you talking about? Kings are air and knights are fire. Not for me. For me, kings are fire, knights are air. So this is fire of fire. This is the ultimate fire. And the king being on the top of the four trees of life, yeah, the fire tree, the water tree, the air tree, and then the culminating in the earth tree. Yeah, this is the kings of kings. He has the king's touch. And he's a magus by blood. He is a born magician. He's a charismatic leader who doesn't require much downtime. Doesn't need much rest. This king is re-energized by leading, is re-energized by implementing the fire that resides within. And perhaps if there is too much downtime, this king might get fatigued, might get worn out because there's been no outlet for the fire within, right? And with this fire, the king inspires those around him when things are going well. However, this king can also slip into very prideful, like a lion, very prideful ways of being in the world, which would be that tipping point into the shadow aspect of the King of Wands. But the king craves big assignments, wants to go big and bold, and wants to do the things the king wants to do spectacularly, but without much interference. The king often wants to go it on his, her, or their own, right? Get out of my way, I'm doing this kind of energy. Maybe not the same get out of my way as the Knight of Wands, which is like running forward and getting an adventure and let's do this crazy thing. The king is the one who moves regally, like a king, but like, get out of my way. I'm going to do something. I'm going to do the thing, yes? And it's impossible for this king to have a neutral impact on the environment or be anonymous. When I was in high school, there was an acquaintance of mine, a lower classman, who was was hot and cold on me. Yeah, sometimes he'd get tired of my energy, I suppose, and sometimes be all googly-eyed over it. And one time he commented to me, and I kind of liked what he said, that I should be followed by a baroque band wherever I go. I should be followed by a train of musicians wherever I go. And I took that as a compliment. Whether he meant it as a compliment, I don't know, but that's how I kind of see this King of Wands. Yeah? He's moving forward with his band of music, doing his creative stuff and enjoying life, and get out of my way because I'm going to do this wonderful thing, and he's going to stand out. That's a wonderful thing, especially now as we're entering the Leo season. And we're going to pair this King of Wands with the Knight of Wands. I'm sorry, not the Knight, the Page. The Knight was last week. Here we have the Page of Wands. Not such a young looking page, right? But a kind of sexy looking page. Yeah, standing all there with the wings on his back and robes very indiscreetly draped over one shoulder and wrapping around his legs, but concealing nothing. Notice the moon on his head. He's holding a wand there in his left hand that is radiant with energy. We got the sun and the moon, is radiant, not so much radiant with energy, I was looking at my black and white image and it looked like the wand had radiant lines coming out of it, but I realized that those aren't radiant lines coming out of the wand. They are radiant lines coming out of both the sun at the top and at the bottom, and then we have the moon at the opposite ends, which is appropriate because remember, we're moving from Cancer, the home of the moon, into Leo, which is the home of the sun. And though this card is not summer, it's spring, we're at that spot. Yeah, we're moving from the moon into the sun, from Cancer into Leo. But you'll also notice this big burst of energy behind the page. And the page serves the Queen of Wands in this deck, who is Aries, from what I recall. So the page here is bringing a little bit of Aries attributes along with him. Not fully, but it's there in spring with this page. And who is this page? You can tell by the way he dresses, she dresses, they dress, with his, her, or their beard, that this is the original Bohemian. Yeah, not needing approval. The page is allied with their own inspiration rather than following other people and the trends of society and what everybody thinks is good or interesting or wonderful or what's hot on YouTube or what's trending on Instagram. This page is going to follow their own inspiration, what they want to do, and be their own creative individual. Even though they are the assistant of the Queen of Wands, they're doing it their own way. Yeah? And yet, not in such a complicated way either. The page finds simple solutions. The page knows a lot of people, is networked, but is not tied or bound to any of them. And the page is a teacher. Yeah? The page loves spending hours teaching and inspiring those around him, especially the young ones around him, her, or them. So the page is like a teacher as well. So what do we get combined with our king? Yeah, king this way, page down here. So the page supports the king in a way. The king, regal, moving forward creatively to do the thing, to be creative, to stand out, to be the magician of his, her, or their inspired desire for creation, is supported by not needing everybody's approval here with the page, right? Following their own inspiration, knowing lots of people, but not being bound to them, and yet still enjoying teaching. Now we create and we teach at the same time. And hopefully, because we've got Leo here, a little bit playfully, a little bit with enjoyment, with finesse, with generosity. But still, the generosity of a free spirit, of a bohemian, rather than the generosity of the servant king. Does that make sense? So that is the primary, I think, information that we're getting from the divine here, is that we can enter into this. But, actually, let's go into the but first. The but. The but is Cancer. The but is the Eight of Cups. Here we go. This beautiful Eight of Cups. You see the solar, it's a Cancer card. We've got the sun, the moon up there at the very, very top. I'm sorry, this is not, okay, wait a second. Backtrack. This is not a Cancer card, but there is Cancer in this card. How? You see the moon at the very, very top. Yeah? You see the winged solar divine-like creature in the background. Now you see the figure has shoulders and a body with wings, but the head is the sun. And that figure looks like they're sitting behind buckets of water, right? Buckets of water, and they kind of look like spermatozoa to me, but there's water sprouting up from the biggest bucket there. We got vibrant, lush plants growing on the sides. And you can see at the very bottom, not Cancer, we have the Scorpio decadent of Pisces, which has the subruler of Mars. Now, because Mars is the planet for Scorpio. So we have the Scorpio decadent of Pisces and the subruler Mars, from which the fixed aspect of mutable water's vital attributes enter our world. So we got fixed fire right up there with Leo. And here we've got a taste of fixed water with the Scorpio decadent of Pisces. And I'm a Scorpio ascendant, just so you know. I got a lot of fixed attributes to my personality. Can you tell? So, why did I keep talking about Cancer? Well, because this is the third decadent of Pisces, we have an exaltation. An upright card gives us an exaltation. And Jupiter, the planet of Pisces, is exalted in Cancer. So, that's where we get Cancer in this card. Now, the Eight of Cups. When we think of the Eight of Cups in the Smith-Waite deck, now Pamela Coleman Smith's art, it's a really dark card. We got 8 cups in the foreground, and walking off into the background, into the distance, is a cloaked figure. Yeah, and we get the idea of leaving behind stuff after a big disappointment, perhaps. Yeah. Here we get something very, very different. Think of these vats of water as a kind of spa. Yeah, this card is suggesting to us we might want to take a spa day, perhaps. Give time to detox and heal. However, do you know any people who, when they say, I want to detox, I want to heal, I want to let everything go, and they decide they have to go far, far away. They choose this destination, perhaps even on the other side of the globe, to go do that work of healing and recovery and transformation. And there are some reasons to do that. Not in this card. Yeah? This card, I think, is not speaking directly, but hinting at the possibility that if we put too much energy, if we use up too much energy to get to that detox space, we're going to maybe collapse. The card doesn't say that, the book doesn't say that, but the book does indicate that maybe it would be better for us to take advantage of local healing possibilities, rather than adding stress to trying to get somewhere different. heal at home or in the neighborhood. There are possibilities there too, right? If we're clever, if we're creative, we'll find a way to detox, to heal, to revitalize ourselves. And that's what this card is pointing to. Rather than work for our healing, we want to surrender and accept the healing that is being offered to us now and always. Now, we're called to regenerate, both internally and externally. Now, we want a full regeneration here. We want a metanoia, according to the book, which is a change, in Greek, a changing of mind. A breaking down that leads to psychological and physical healing, conversion, and reformation. A complete fix up and work over right here, right now, by surrendering to it. Rather than seeking it and working for it and going out and getting it, yeah? Which, at this point, with all of this fiery Leo energy, would move us away from the goal that we are seeking, yeah? Seeking our healing sometimes puts us in the place of striving ego, which is what we want to avoid. We want to avoid that, especially now. With all of this fire and Leo and Page of Wands and Aries accompanied attributes, which are burning around us in the midst of this summer. We also want to find time to surrender to our own metanoia, so that we don't get trapped into an ego-driven path at this time. Because remember, this is the beginning of the dry way of opening to ascension. Rather than clinging to the passionate fire of the physical, we want to open and let that fire allow us to rise on the dry path. Does that make sense? So, the but to those two fire cards, the fiery King of Wands and the fiery Page of Wands, is but be sure to take the time to heal, to detox, because, like I said, that king doesn't really like doing that much, but we will benefit from it. Surrender to it from time to time. Maybe meditation, whatever it is for you that allows you to open and surrender to your own healing rather than fixing things. You know, does that make sense? Now, if we can do that, if we can keep the king and the page nice and balanced, and we have time there for our healing, we can move into where are you, baby? One of my favorite cards in the deck, the Fool. Which is, now, well, let's look at the card first. What do we see? We see this androgyne looking figure. Can you see this figure as an androgyne, both male and female? Can you see the power points of the body being lit up by planets? Can you see the dog there at the Fool's foot being very friendly and intimate with the Fool? I love that. We got the sun and the moon up there in the sky. We got what could be Venus, maybe, by the moon. We've got plant life inside of the Ouroboros shape. Well, it's not really an Ouroboros, but there's a big, maybe it's a Vesica Pisces, but there's an opening there that the Fool is moving out from this lush garden, maybe even a Garden of Eden, into a more fiery environment. And you see at the bottom that the Fool is pointing us towards the sun, right? Which is domiciled in, which resides in Leo, right? So we've got another emphasis of Leo right beneath the King of Wands card right here, right? So we've got that solar power and the Leonine attributes emphasized in the Fool as well. And so fixed fire's vital attributes enter our world once again through this card. Now the Fool being, for me, especially and also for this deck, the last card of the Major Arcana. It is unnumbered, but the creator of this deck, as well as I, prefer to think of the Magus as number 1, which it is. And so, for me and the creator of this deck, number 1 should be the beginning of the Hebrew alphabet. Aleph should not be at 0, but at number 1. The letter Aleph indicates the number 1. Not the number 0, the number 1. So for me and the creator of this deck, Aleph is the Magus, the magician. Bet is the high priestess. And then we keep going on with Gimel, I think, is the next one, which would be the Empress. Yeah, and okay. This is not the time for me to review my Hebrew. So this is the last card. Being the last card. Now, some people put, for me strangely, but some people put the Fool before the world. For me, the Fool is after the world, and so the letter Tau is associated with the Fool. What is the Tau? The Tau is associated with the cross, the Tau cross, although it doesn't, the actual Hebrew letter does not look like a Tau cross, but it's associated with it. It's also associated with a mark, like X marks the spot kind of mark. Doesn't look like an X either, but it is associated with that. It's humankind's ultimate destination. It's a destination, but not the end of all journeys. It's the end of a particular journey and the beginning of a new one. It's completion before beginning again. That is what Tov. Tov connects Shin, which is the penultimate letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and Aleph, the first letter. Tov is that connection, that liminal space, the transition from completion into new beginnings, which is, to me, the Fool. It's the Fool as the last card is also associated with Ingwaz as a rune. Ingwaz is the earth god, the great god Ing. I love saying that, the great god Ing, which is the god of fertility, retreat as well. So we got fertility and retreat and growth. We've got that tension of symbols here in the Ingwaz, which kind of looks like a diamond, or a square turned from this direction to this direction, a diamond. Let's just call it a diamond. Yeah. So we've got that idea of portal as well in Ingwaz, but we have that tension of retreat and growth, of fertility and endings, which is total Fool symbolism. And so, what do we have with the Fool? And remember, we're right there in the zodiacal wheel, yeah? We're ending the wet way and we're beginning the dry way. So, the end always implies and is embedded in the beginning, as well as the beginning is always embedded and implies the end. We have access to infinite potential because the Fool is dragged down by nothing, has nothing dragging him down yet. The Fool is pure potential. All of that energy that culminated in the world is now, all that kinetic energy has now converted back into potential. There's also the idea of a fool for God here in the Franciscan tradition, which is living for and within either the Holy Spirit or Sophia, the divine feminine, God as mother. There are, if you really study Christianity and Catholicism, you will know that there was a very strong divine feminine, God as mother, Christ as mother, period, in Catholic scholasticism. So living within that mothering God. Sophia, the Holy Spirit, is also part of the Fool's attributes. Not being concerned with, and we've had these ideas bouncing around with the King and the Page of Wands, not being concerned what other people are thinking of us and doing what we are inspired to do by the divine. Self-cultivation lifts up ourselves as well as those around us, like a bodhisattva. That's also possible here. And that's possible if we follow our bonding of the king and page, as well as taking the time to heal, to regenerate, to detox. Then we can be the fool, begin our new journey in the dry way, our ascent back into spirit. This is a very, very powerful reading, I believe. This information, I don't like using the word message, but this message beaming through the solar divine into our question of how can we live more intentionally in the coming weeks. That's how we do it. Like this. Yeah? Our king and our page are bonded. We take the time for this, and then we can be this in the world. Now, that's the information that we're receiving. So what's growing in that information? What's growing in that divine light? Let's take a look at those three cards now. These three cards, growing in the divine light, began with the Two of Wands at the very, very bottom, and then the Ten of Wands. I told you there was a lot of fire in this spread. And then the Knight of Cups. So we got two wands growing in the light of a lot of fire energy, right? The King of Wands, the Page of Wands, the Fool associated with the Sun, with just a smidgen balance of Jupiter and Cancer, that expansiveness in the cardinal water suit, along with the Scorpio decanate of Pisces. A lot of, in that one card, we had all of the water signs, right? Giving us a nice balance to all of that fire. And so growing in the center was a lot more fire and just a touch of air. Because in this deck, the cups are air. Right? You remember that, don't you? Don't you? The cups are air, the swords are water. So, we begin with this beautiful, beautiful Two of Wands card. Do you see this? Can you see the grapes growing at the top? Can you see the... Let me double check, just a moment. Yes, the fire beneath, the fire below, gives us steam which feeds the grapes growing above. And this isn't like a raging forest fire, because those grapes are growing pretty nicely. This is a moderate fire, which transforms dampness into steam, which feeds life, which feeds the wine, the blood of Christ. Okay, I just had to go there for a second, because we were just talking about Sophia, the feminine, Christ as mother. Yeah, so that symbolic Christ blood element of grape is being fed here by our internal fire. So what does this card mean for Eudes Picard, who created the original deck? This is cooperation and alliance for productivity. Now you'll remember at the top, we had both the king and the knight wanting to go it alone. The fool kind of wanting to go it alone. Here, growing in that is a suggestion that we might want to cooperate with some other people. Yeah? The sun's energy sprouts the seed and spurs growth into the young plants. So we've got the beginnings of growth that will eventually lead to harvest. which is kind of the beginning of the dry path back up to Capricorn, right? So we've got productivity, we've got the idea that we could possibly want to consider working with other people, even though that might not be our natural inclination. We might want to work with some people when we're in the right space, when we don't become domineering, because it's cooperation and alliance for productivity. Productivity. Potato, potato. The next card is the 10 of Wands. Yeah, this is all fire. Now those 10 wands form a wheel of pure fire. Very simple and yet powerful and beautiful card. And for Eudes Picard, the 10 of Wands gives us good and careful. Yeah? There's a possibility of excessive activity in this card. Extreme exertion. But also a work of genius. And so we're reminded of that 8 of Cups card in the Divine Light. So yes, this is growing, but watch out. Be careful. Don't move into excessiveness and extreme. And if we can do that, we can have what we want, the harvest. Yeah? The harvest can be fulfilled here. So we begin with the cooperation and alliance for productivity. Yeah, the sprout is growing below, and then here we have harvest. Could also be travel, but remember, travel for healing, not the best idea right now. Travel for productivity, maybe. And this card leads us right into the Knight of Cups, which is, let me see, where is it? You see at the bottom, there are 2 helmets. But where are you, Mr. There you are. Okay, so can you see this? Right there where my finger is. There is the sign for Gemini. Yeah, so the Knight of Cups points to Gemini, which is the domicile of Mercury, from which mutable heirs, vital attributes enter our world, enter the question we're asking of the Tarot, which is, how can we live more intentionally? Well, we grow our seed, we come to our harvest, and then we got to get kind of clever. We want to be clever here. Now, Picard, Eudes Picard, the original creator of this deck, attributes this card as a seducer. I think there might be a more positive way of reading that than that word first okay, so the word seducer to me has very negative connotations. I'm sure there are positive attributes of a seducer as well, but when I think of seducer, I think of somebody who gets you to do something that you think you don't want to do or that you think is bad. However, there's a more positive way of understanding what I think Picard was pointing to, which is winning hearts over with our wit, with our gallantry, and our upright demeanor, with our nobility. So, remember, we started working with other people, cooperating with other people for productivity. Now we got to the harvest, and now we want to win their hearts over with our charm. With our, not the charm of a Leo so much as the charm of a Gemini. Witty, clever, communicative, able to talk to very different people and win their hearts over. And yet we also want to be patient. This card also asks us to be patient and wait, to be flexible in how we work with other people. Instead of being such a rigid fiery Leo person or Scorpio person, this card is reminding us of flexibility in working with other people and relating with other people, with our partners sexually, but also the partners in our creative endeavors in the world. And be patient. Now the harvest is coming, and we want to be patient. We don't want to, the harvest is here. Sometimes we can be a little bit too eager and try to get the stuff off of the plants before it's reached its culmination, its fullness. We can harvest too early. Even though it's harvest time, there's still the potential of harvesting too early because we're too eager to get the stuff. This is asking us to be patient and wait for the fullness. Be flexible with how we're working with people and interacting with people. Be clever, be witty, be Gemini plus Leo. You know? That's what's growing. This is a wonderful potential for us at this time. So how can we get a hold of that? How can we reach out and grasp it? Now, this is going to be a very interesting part of the reading, and let me show you those cards right now. These cards are very different, right? Believe it or not, the minor arcana for this deck is inspired by, not completely, absolutely copied from, but inspired by and following the tradition of Eudes Picard. The majors are a little bit different. And you saw from left to right, we had the Nine of Swords, a water card. Now this is a water suit. Then we had Justice, which is also in this deck, a water card. And then we had the the Knight of Cups, again, an air card, right? So we had 2 water and 1 air, which is interesting. But let's begin with the Nine of Swords, because that's the direction the hand is reaching out from to grasp the wand that is growing. The Nine of Swords. Beautiful card. We've got the 2 fish down there in the water. We've got a pentacle created by 5 swords above. We've got 4 swords below, which gives us stability to the water, but also a little bit of containment, of reducing the water's ability to flow. And the 5 swords above, you see those lily pads. This is very interesting, yeah? According to Picard, the Nine of Swords, again, it's an emotion card, is hatred, envy, and intoxication. Not such a happy card, right? The environment is toxic and inhospitable right now. Why? Because these lilies are blocking the light to reach the water. That water is bound by those 4 swords, so it's becoming stagnant and it's not receiving the energy it needs to revitalize itself. So this card here is giving us the possibility of hatred and envy, maybe a little bit of intoxication, but I think Christine Payne-Towler's take on this card is more poignant, is more appropriate in this reading, which is don't throw good energy into this environment. Now, why the heck are we starting there? So we've got the King and Page of Wands, yeah, all fired up. We have the potential to embody the fool for God, to embody the fool. We've got some really great stuff growing there in the light. But remember that Eight of Cups card up there at the top? Elementally, if we looked at those 4 cards again, you'll notice there was a lot of fire and 1 water. Water and fire do not mix in as far as elemental dignities go. And so those 4 cards in that spot, we got this beautiful energy of the divine pouring in of fire and Leo and creativity and going your own way, the bohemian, all of that. And that fire, that water card is there telling us that we have a problem to solve. Why are we being told to detox, to heal, to have our metanoia? Because right now the environment that we are in with all of that fire energy needs to get cleaned up. And that's why this card is here. Right now, we have the potential for this wonderful stuff, all of this fire to grow, but right now, there's a lot of stagnancy around us. There's a lot of sediment. There's a lot of algae, not unhealthy algae. Algae which is sucking the oxygen out of our fire. So, as things are right now at this moment, we don't want to pour energy into this environment, but we've got all this energy. So what do? Yes, we detox. But what do? Well, we do this next card, which is what? Justice. And in this deck, justice is, I'm sorry, just a moment, is associated with, you see there at the top, we have Cancer, right? Cancer, which is the domicile of the moon, from which cardinal water's vital attributes enter our world. Now, many other decks will put Libra with justice, right? But this deck puts Cancer here. And you see at the top left hand, this corner, that's the top left, I believe, for you. We see the letter Heth, which is correct, yeah? The letter Heth, which is a doorway, yeah? A doorway and a lintel. Yeah, the top part of a doorway, which is the place where the Hebrews, the Jews, put the blood of the lamb, echoes of Christ, but yes, the blood of the lamb at Passover, so that death would pass them over when it came streaming through Egypt. So we have that idea of Passover doorways, lintels, righteousness and grace and wisdom of the people who knew to do that to save themselves from the passing of death. That's part of Heth here. The rune associated with justice is Wunjo. Wunjo kind of looks like a flag on a flagpole. And it's the rune of luck, of balance, yeah, justice, balance, joy, peace, and contentment. It's the party rune, but not the party like a frat house party, but the party of luck, balance, joy, and peace, and contentment. Now, all of that makes interesting sense for justice. And yet, what do we see on this card? We got this guy with a sword held up over his head and what looks like a baby dangling from its feet in front of him. What the heck's up with that? Do you know? Do you know? Do you know? Do you know? What is this card pointing to? Well, that image sings out the name Solomon the Wise, King Solomon. And there's a story about King Solomon. Two mothers came with one baby, claiming that the baby was, both of them claiming that the baby was theirs. Now there's the mother who was apparently taking care of it, and another mother came up saying, that is my baby. And what did Solomon do? Solomon said, after a long deliberation of, are you willing to give up the child? No, I'm not willing to give up the child, but no, the child is mine. She should not have it anymore. It's mine. Solomon said, right, what I will do is I will cut this baby in half. I will give half to you and half to you. That's what this scene is. This is Solomon raising the sword above his head, saying, right, okay, then what we'll do is I'll cut the baby in half. Now you might be thinking, what the ever-loving F? UCK. What the ever-loving fuck is that? Well, if you know the story, you know the story. What happens? One mother said, no, no, no. Let her take the baby, the whole baby. Don't cut it in half. I don't want the baby to die. I want the baby to live. I want the baby to be happy. She should take the baby. Only one of the mothers said that. So, what do you think Solomon did after that? Solomon gave the whole baby to the woman who gave it up, because clearly that was the real mother who was able to sacrifice her own desires for the benefit and the health and the life of her child. That's the kind of justice here. Now you might say, well, that's cruel. That's cruel and unusual punishment, but it's the justice of clarity, of discovery, of who is right. And offering sometimes shocking evidence to make that discernment. So there's discernment here as well. It's the discovery of truth. So instead of Themis here, which is the woman sitting with the balance and the scale, reminding us a little bit of the scales of the heart from Egyptian mythology, and the sword standing up like we'd see at the halls of justice for modern Western courts. Here we've got Solomon and discovery of truth. So that comes after don't pour energy into stagnant waters, into this corrupted environment. First, discover truth. And then do what? What do we have next? We got the Knight of Cups yet again. And you can see, here you can see that Gemini symbol much more easily up here. And you can see the Hebrew letter Yod. Why? Because in this deck, the 4 court cards are Yod, He, Vav, He. I'm sorry, this is not Yod. This is Vav. What am I saying? Oh my God, my Hebrew. Okay, so this is Vav. The Yod is the little guy, right? For the tetragram. The 4 letters of the divine name. Yod, He, Vav, He. The unpronounceable name. This is the second one, which all knights in this deck are the Yod, He, Vav, are the Vav. So we got both of these. We got Gemini, which gives us the planet Mercury and mutable heirs, vital attributes entering our world. We have the letter Vav, which is the second masculine of the tetragrammaton. Masculine Yod, feminine He, their child Vav. And again, we got the idea of the seducer, but again, focusing on winning people's hearts with our wit, our honor, our magnanimous demeanor, our nobility, waiting patiently for when, not rushing to the harvest, being flexible with those we're working with, and we'll get there. So yeah, first, we don't pour our energy, all that fire we had at the top. The way we reach out and grab all of that fire is not by pouring fire into the situation right now. First, we need discernment. We're called for discernment. We're also called to heal, to clean ourselves up, for metanoia, to change our minds, to find the truth, and then use our wit, use our cleverness to move out and finally take a hold of that. Which that also had the Knight of Wands at the very tippy top. So it's a merging, it's a joining of the thing that is growing and us that is developing, that is becoming, that is having our metanoia experience. Does that make sense? So, friends, we've got 2 little bits of advice down there at the bottom. Let's take a look at that advice and see what it has to offer. Here we go. That was the advice. You saw on the left, we had the harvest moon upright. And then on the right, we had the waning gibbous reversed. Now, because this is what the backs look like, just in case you're curious. Because this is a round deck, when I shuffle this deck, these cards can come up in many different positions. Upright, reversed, like we would normally think of a reversed tarot card, but they can also point off to the left and point off to the right. So when I flip the card over, I notice is it mostly upright, is it mostly reversed, is it mostly pointing in one direction or the other? And the way I read round decks is if they're upright, they're just the normal upright reading, meaning. If they're the reverse, they're the normal reverse meaning, which could be a resistance to whatever that upright meaning would have been. If they're pointing off to the left, that means the upright reading is still accurate, yet there's not enough energy to manifest whatever it is happening in the upright meaning. So if it's wishes fulfilled, if the card is pointing off to the left, then it's, well, you don't have the energy to fulfill your wishes right now. Now, if it's upright, you're getting your wish, yay! If it's reversed, it's, well, your wish is coming, but you're not letting it come. If it's pointing off to the left, is your wishes, you have the potential, but you don't have the energy for it right now. If it's pointing off to the right, that means you're working too hard for it. Yeah? You're trying too hard to get your wish to manifest. Ease off a little bit. Or a lot bit. Yeah? So that's how I read the cards as they come out in a round deck. So again, we have one upright, one just plain old reversed. The upright card, let me show it to you upright right now. This is the Harvest Moon. This is a gorgeous card. Do you see the 4 pumpkins there? Top, bottom, left, and right? And there are autumn leaves there as well. We have suns and moons in the different corners, reminding me a lot of the, which card was it? Which card was it? Just a second. Oh yes, the Page of Wands, which is spring. But remember, we had the sun and moon catty-corner in that deck, in that card. Here we have, very similarly, although in reversed places, we've got the sun and the moon. In the page, the suns were top right, bottom left. Here the suns are top left, bottom right. But yeah, still, we got an echo of that there too as well. And we also have the yin-yang, or yang in Korean. Right there in the center. It's a beautiful card. And the Harvest Moon is associated, you could, I don't know, can you see down there at the bottom? It says gratitude. So that's the first piece of advice. Gratitude. Always good advice. Always good advice. Welcome the new season and changes ahead. And we're here at it's not exactly the change of a season, but it's a change of cycle from the wet path to the dry path. And it's a change of ways of being in the world. And so, welcome that. Welcome what is. Even though the water may be a little bit, maybe stagnant right now, welcome what is and the changes that are about to take place. Reflect on the journey we've been on so far and the paths we have taken with gratitude. Be thankful for how we got to where we are right now. Keep our energy of abundance cycling through us. Start those waters, those emotions moving and cycling again. Give love unconditionally if we can. And bring back balance and harmony, giving and receiving. Let the energy in our lives, the emotional energy and other energies in our lives, begin moving in its cycles again. Right? That will help get us past that 9 of water card in that hand that was reaching out, right? So we begin with gratitude. Gratitude for how we got into that stagnant water. Be grateful for that path. Because now we're about to leave and we can start getting our, again, emotional and other kinds of energy flowing again. And the next card is, which was reversed. Let me show it to you upright. Yeah, this is the waxing gibbous. The waxing gibbous is right after a full moon, it starts to get smaller. This is just the first step of getting smaller, the waxing gibbous. And there's not all that much to see on the card. We've got the large moon there. We see a bit of it is starting to go dark. But this is a good card and an important card. But remember, it came to us reversed with resistance. The meaning of this card is listen. So, as we begin with gratitude, we recognize the places where we are resisting listening to others around us. Yeah? The card is asking us to ground into our body and direct our energy inward to connect with our intuition. Listen to the voices within. Maybe we're resisting or ignoring of the voice of our intuition. Maybe we're not really paying enough attention to what's down there. Remember, we had all that Cancer, right? Cancer in the 8 of Cups because Jupiter is there. We want to do that. But right now, it looks like this card is reminding us that we are not giving that enough attention. Just like that card, elemental dignity-wise, we weren't giving enough attention to our detox, to our healing, to our giving attention to our emotional state. This card is reminding us of that. And also to our listening to the voice from within. We want to guide our actions with love. Unconditional love. We want to guide our actions with love. Be receptive and adaptable. Gemini, adaptable. We want to be adaptable. To listen to our inner voice and, of course, follow it. In gratitude, in a recognition that we can begin the waters of our lives to move, to transform, to enliven, to become, to purify, to change as we begin the ascent on the dry path. Does that make sense to you? So what are we asked to do? Be grateful for all of that stuff. Listen, especially within. Listen for the way we can follow our path of healing as we move into our power. Perfect for this time of year. Don't you agree? If you do, let me know in the comments below. If you don't, let me know in the comments below. I would really love to hear from you. Friends, remember, in just a moment, there will be a short clip that will give you the names of the decks and the names of the creators. And if this is your first time here and you have not yet, hit the subscribe button and the alarm bell so you get notifications of when I upload videos. I'm changing everything around for the next week. I'm moving into my transition into the Thoth year. I've already mentioned that several times, I'm sure. So you might want to get notifications of when I upload videos. And comment below. I would really love to hear from you. Oh, if you want a reading from me, I can still do that. My email address is below. thehangedmaninthemoon@gmail.com. Shoot me an email. We'll get you a reading with whatever system you're interested in. Okay? So friends, here we are. Thank you very much for following me on this journey, and thank you for following me on the next leg of the journey into a brand new, well, not new, I've studied Thoth before, but I've never read with it publicly. I've never used it publicly. So that's the new thing. Follow me into that new adventure. And friends, now, as always, I wish you love, joy, well-being, and pure awareness. Thank you.